All right, so another video or thought that I had today as I was kind of going through some of our old YouTube ideas was just like the progress I've made in my kind of video game, uh, I guess like post college kind of lifestyle. Uh, a lot of collections. Like if I look at how much I've purchased and sold on Macari alone, it's like thousands of dollars worth of stuff. However, like I actually keep a spreadsheet and my entire collection is like quote unquote free, like from everything I purchased and then sold. Like I'd buy lots and then I'd flip them. I got super into like garage sale hunting and stuff back in 2018, and amassed like a huge library and a huge collection of Super Nintendo, NES, N64, GameCube, even like some Sega Genesis. I got into Sega CD for a while, and it just got me thinking about my journey. And there's been so many times where I've looked at things like minimalism and then on the flip side digital minimalism, which they kind of contrast each other. uh, Looking at like maximalism, right, and just trying to find like what fits my lifestyle. And what I kind of discovered over this time is the need for moderation and in curating a library rather than collecting. I think there's a lot of people who we get big boy jobs kind of, as we get to past college and we're adults, and maybe you're dinks, dual income, no kids, right? And you just have the money to kind of spend, right? Start at one point I had a huge Switch library of just so many different games, like a bunch of limited run games and anything Nintendo published, right? Pick that up. And at a certain point you realize, like, with your responsibilities being an adult and just, if you're not going to just be a basement dweller in your parents' basement, if no shade, I guess, well, a little shade if that's where you're at in life. um, but you can't play everything, right? And so I kind of had this shift where I was looking for the answer of like, okay, how do I do this, or how do I incorporate like a more minimalistic aesthetic, uh, while still being kind of minimal digital, incorporating digital minimalism too, where you can still have physical things, because I think physical things are important, but having an abundance where you're kind of like a hoarder, like that's where you have to find that balance. And so I like the word curation, and it's going to be different for everybody, right? When you're curating a library of video games, it really comes down to what's special to you, and you're going to have a different approach. Like everyone has a different approach, right? What's maybe more nostalgic to you? What do you get more benefit from? Maybe you're a big PlayStation guy and like that's just what you focus on. Maybe you're a big Nintendo person, like you grew up with Nintendo like me, or you're a big Sega person. I have friends that grew up with Genesis rather than Super Nintendo. So it's just a different way to look at enjoying your games. And like you can even see behind me, and this is still a mess. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do here. Uh, but with my N64 games, it's definitely the majority of my library. And to believe it or not, like this is very pared down. These are childhood games and some games I played in my adulthood, like Shadow Man. Like I never played that, but Shane and I, my cousin, we played through that a couple years ago over a long weekend, and it was amazing. And I'm like, I definitely want to play that again, and I can't wait to play. I have the Switch version to play through the remake, or the remaster. Anyway, it's you can kind of see like I have a very curated list. I probably used to have close to 60 Super Nintendo games at one point, and I have like 7 here. Ones that I've played through, I've completed, and I want to play again, right? And same thing with NES. Like I've more recently gone back and decided I do want to have a small curated library of NES games that mean something to me. And again, these are games that I played through, have completed, and that I enjoy. And then same with GameCube. GameCube was our second home console we had, and 64 was the first. And so actually picking up some of the games that we, probably traded into GameStop at one point, or I sold off in lots. And anyway, it's finding those select few games that you're going to play again and you're going to go back to frequently. Otherwise, you're just amassing a collection to kind of hoard this physical media, which is just going to sit on a shelf. And I think there's a balance, and a lot of people like to look at the content that's on their shelf, and it's like art, right? You can curate art, but if your entire house just has pictures all along the walls and there's not really anything separating and creating a comfortable space, then the art kind of loses its aesthetic and its value because it's just in a sea of other pictures and other art, right? So it's kind of the same thing with a library. I think when it comes to curating, at least for me, or I guess when I was collecting first, right, I would just buy games thinking like, oh, I'll get to this eventually. I'll put this on the shelf and I'm going to eventually get to it. I'll add it to my backlog and I'm going to try to crank through my backlog, get as much stuff as I can, enjoy all these games. But really it was just like checking a box, trying to get through them as fast as I could. And there was a few games I did that, like Celeste. I think I flew through Celeste just to beat it, and it's a great game. It's an amazing game. Like, played that years ago. But it's a game I would like to probably go through again and just enjoy, like not be in such a stress period to try to complete it. Right now, I'm playing through Minish Cap. Got close to beating it as a kid, but never could beat Vati, and I think a lot of people probably weren't able to do that. It's pretty tough. And right now, I'm actually right up to that point again. I've played through it, and rather than kind of busting through and finishing it, I decided, you know what, I kind of want to go collect some more of the heart pieces and try to do more of the stones and side quests, right? So it's more enjoying and having less stress about trying to complete and check off the boxes on that backlog, because when you have that mindset, that backlog's just going to continue to grow. And I think a big part of it is just being willing to say, I don't need to go through all these games, because you're never going to be able to do and play and complete every single game that you want to. It's impossible. If you have responsibilities, any responsibilities at all, you go to school, you have a family, you have kids, whatever it is, you will never go through every game that you would like to play. So why not curate a collection, curate a library rather than a collection, and just focus on the games that mean more to you. And then, and that way, you don't feel bad if you want to go back and play Majora's Mask for the 10th time because you love that game, right? It's what's special to you, and you can allow yourself to hold on to that game because you're going to go back to it again and again. Whereas if you're going to pick up, trying to put me on the spot here. Okay, we'll say Super Nintendo. If we're talking Super Nintendo and you have Super Castlevania 4, but you have to have all the games, right? And so you pick up Dracula X. It's an okay game. I've had it and I've sold it, but it's not my favorite. I don't think it's as good. But I could have held on to it for the clout of, I own Dracula X. It's a rare Super Nintendo game, right? There's so many. I could go on forever, right? Like even Worms on the Nintendo 64. Like, I love that 64, so I need to collect all the games that hold value and that are special, right? Well, the game's fine, but I don't have any nostalgic tie to it, and I don't really care to go back and play it. So why would I hold on to that unless I was just trying to hoard and collect these games, right? So curating collection and having games that actually mean something special is huge. I guess then lastly, when we're talking about this, because I don't want to run on forever, but it's just kind of the thoughts going on through my head today, is how do you curate that collection, right? How do you go about slowly curating? Like, what do you buy? When can you buy? For me, it's if I play through a game, and I'll use ROMs and decide if I actually want to like keep the game or not, or purchase the game. Almost like people will read a book on Kindle and then actually buy the book if they really like it, a trophy book. It's kind of like the trophy game idea. If you're going to go back and read that book, I think it's okay to add that book to your library. Same thing with a game. If you're going to go back and play that game, if you found value in that game and you really loved it, it's probably not the worst thing in the world to add that to your curated list, right? Your curated library. So that's kind of part of my rule set. The other thing is if it's a childhood game, I'm only really buying like one or two, maybe a month slowly. But again, the goal there is that if I can't really play it and jump back in and play it, then there's no really need for me to go back and buy that, because I had a good chunk of childhood games that I don't have anymore. And not all of those I really want to play again. Like, it would just be, I just have to collect this because I had it at one point. So that's something else to consider. And then if you do have a game and it's part of your library, don't be afraid to get rid of it, right? If you're not going to play it again, if you play through it or maybe you don't even finish it because you're like, I want to do something else, I'm not really interested in it right now. It's not really the end of the world if you get rid of it, right? So why keep it if it's just going to sit there on the shelf? Maybe somebody else will get enjoyment from it, or maybe that was their childhood game they loved and they want to go back and play frequently. So I think it just allows you to have a little bit more of a decluttered and clean and organized library of video games that isn't so overwhelming. I think on the digital minimalism side, and I do want to talk about digital minimalism and minimalism with the video game space, because I've looked for that a lot, like on YouTube and forums, and I've had to kind of find my own path with that, and I hope that helps other people. But just to talk quickly about it, the digital minimalism side is you can get super overwhelmed. Like if you have just a huge list of ROMs, or if your Steam library is like 300 games, you hop on and you're like, I don't know what to play. You get decision fatigue, or you're playing one game and then you're like, yeah, I want to play this, but I also have 10 other games I need to try to get to. Having a digital library can be super overwhelming also. And so you get that feeling from a huge library of physical things and with a huge library of digital things. So paring down and just focusing on what you actually want to play now and just enjoy it. If it takes you 3 days and you blast through it because you just have a long weekend and no responsibilities, and cool, that's great. It takes you 3 months to get through it, even better. You get to enjoy that game longer and it gets to be a part of your life that much more. Don't let the rest of a backlog or a collection hold you back from enjoying a hobby that's just meant to be enjoyed, right? So again, another reason to kind of curate and focus on a smaller library of games. And then I think lastly, it's okay to have your own style or your own kind of set of rules. For me, when I finish a game, I have like these custom game cases rather than trying to buy like the complete in-box copy, and it costs $1 million to buy those things now. Usually get the physical copy, and then if I can, I'll get a manual. And then if it's a crazy expensive manual like Snowboard Kids 2, if I'm ever going to get that, I'll probably just buy like the $10 reproduction manual on Etsy. And that's because it's just for me, right? And they look good enough. I'd give them like an 8 out of 10. So that's my rule set. And rather than what I've done in the past where I would just like any kind of deal I would find, I'm going to buy a lot and flip it. Like it just consumes your life. And then you're not really enjoying games anymore, are you? So spacing out purchases, being very smart about what you purchase and bring into your curated library, maybe only buying the things that you've completed and that you know you're going to play again, and getting rid of some of the things that you know you're never going to play again. And that's something I'm working on now, trying to continually curate and keep my collection up to date. And again, library, not collection, rather, right? And I think it's going to help you be less stressed. You're not going to have to worry about a backlog as much. You're going to enjoy your library more. Everything feels like it belongs and that it has some special value. And you're going to have more intention in what you're doing when it comes to gaming. So anyway, I think that's just kind of a thought I've had in my mind. I hope it's helpful to other people, because it's been a stressor for me trying to figure out my balance between minimalism and digital minimalism and having, different collections of video games. And it feels like a weight off of my shoulders, being able to kind of talk through and say, hey, it's okay to not have every game and to enjoy less. And I guess the ultimate, or like the underlying conversation, is enjoying less more. And so I guess that's kind of it. That's my thoughts. I'll probably have more of these little one-offs because my undiagnosed ADD brain likes to do these little crazy thoughts pretty frequently. But I go down these rabbit holes and then I kind of try to come up with solutions, and hopefully others can find that valuable as well. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts and what they've done to kind of curate a library of games and enjoy them more, rather than just collect as much as you can and then become overwhelmed with the idea and the fact that you'll never get to play through all those games. And we'll hopefully see you in the comments.